If satire is the art of using laughter to keep from crying, few people are better at it than Daily Show host Jon Stewart, and I chose his segment on so-called Pointergate in Minneapolis to provide a lighthearted entry into what's really a pretty serious topic: racism, politics, and police-community relations. Last week, I explained the tensions between different conscious and unconscious systems in the human brain. And I'm going to follow up on that today as it applies to racism and also to police-community relations. Let us begin with Neville Gordon, a young black man who grew up poor in Chicago, actually, and then moved to Minneapolis at age 18. He had relatives there. He thought he would have better work opportunities there. But unfortunately, a year later, he was caught carrying a controlled substance and a pistol. And under Minneapolis gun laws, the drugs automatically made it illegal to possess a firearm, so he was arrested and charged with 2 felonies. But because he had no criminal record, no gang record, and it was a non-violent offense, the court let him off easy. He received 5 years of probation. It was the kind of thing that happens to young black men, thousands of them, every year, except that he was luckier than many. He was free to go out and find a job, and he actually found one. His probation officer does confirm he stayed out of trouble ever since. He went to work for a nonprofit called Neighborhoods Organizing for Change, NOC. And one of their activities is voter registration in poor neighborhoods, and according to his supervisor, Gordon has done well. He's good at knocking on doors and explaining why people should go to the trouble to get out to the polls and vote. This year's Get Out the Vote drive in Minneapolis and the North Side was a rare bright spot in an election year known for bad voter turnout. Anyway, one day during this fall's drive, Gordon and his partner were joined by a couple of VIP volunteers, Minneapolis Mayor Betsy Hodges and Minneapolis Chief of Police Janae Harto. Officially, it was a community relations thing, but let's be honest here, it was also a chance for the mayor to go get out and do some grassroots politicking of her own, maybe have a photo op or two. And in one photo, the mayor and Gordon, not knowing what to do with their free hands when asked to pose together, wound up pointing their fingers at one another. And next thing you know, Police Union President John Delmonico tipped off Minneapolis ABC affiliate KSTP that the mayor had flashed gang signs with a black guy. Didn't matter that the police chief herself was part of the event and didn't see it that way. Didn't matter that Neville Gordon was not affiliated with any gang. This really is one of those moments when you do have to laugh to keep from crying. It wasn't about gang activity, it was about politics. I've been an American my whole life. I love this country, but we're not perfect, particularly in this day and age. I am rarely proud of politicians at the top of our leadership structure. And I also grew up in a union household. I was a union member myself for 20 years before I went into ministry, and I believe in the union movement. But unions are no more perfect than the rest of the nation. Just as what's best in our nation is rarely seen in our top political leadership, what's best in the union movement is rarely present in their political leadership. And as president of the Minneapolis Police Union, John Delmonico is no longer a policeman. He's a politician, and he's also a lobbyist. With his eye for the comic nugget at the center of any story, Jon Stewart, I think, is spot on about what's going on here. On October 9th, the U.S. Justice Department had released an investigative report that stated Minneapolis Police Department needed to, quote, get far more aggressive in rooting out bad police officers. The mayor responded with her intention to do so, and that police-community relations would become a cornerstone of her administration. That's why the police chief was there. And Union Chief Delmonico has been furious with her ever since. Police Chief Harto's presence again in the voter drive was part of the response, but old-style Union Chief Delmonico takes an us versus them line toward any criticism of his union membership. And when the photo of Gordon and the mayor turned up on Facebook, he saw an opportunity to embarrass the mayor. Some politicians do play rough, and he is apparently one of them. Minneapolis station KSTP didn't bother to ask their own police chief about the photo, even though she was present. That's what happens when news people care about sensation and entertainment instead of news. It's bad enough that it's politics as usual. To me, it's even worse that it's also news as usual. KSTP has become a national laughingstock, and to me, they deserve what they got from Jon Stewart and others. But the most poignant moment of Stewart's clip was when he hauled out that long piece of fan-fold printer paper to, quote, update our list of innocent things black people do that look suspicious to white people. And that's the real laugh to keep from crying moment. Pointing with the thumb up is a common gesture. It's a feature of youth and hip-hop culture these days. Gang members probably do it. A lot of young people do it. Some older people do it too. But when Wisconsin Governor Scott Walker does it, and he actually does it quite often, it's just an emphatic gesture. But when a political enemy does it, particularly an attractive woman arm in arm with a young black man, it can go to sinister places in the American psyche, and that's exactly where KSTP took it. When I talked about the human brain last week, I explained how different systems in the brain work in parallel. A higher processing system in the frontal lobe versus the primal fight or flight limbic system can respond to the exact same information at the same time in very different ways. In other words, you can think one thing in one part of your brain and feel the exact opposite in another. We do it all the time. Now, I don't like racism, and I'll bet you don't like racism either, but the scientific truth is, I do racism, and I bet you do racism as well. And I'm not just talking about participation in a racially biased society. It goes deeper than that. I have racist perceptions sometimes, and I bet you do too. There's another strong piece of our evolutionary toolkit that ties in with this, and that's group dynamics. We are evolved to function in groups, and we form those groups in pretty arbitrary ways. One way is appearance. Different hairstyles, different clothing, different skin colors are all invitations to subconscious group dynamics. Our subconscious mind then automatically assigns positive characteristics to our group and negative characteristics to other groups. It happens below the level of consciousness. We don't even know we're doing this, but it does too often lead our conscious mind to justify ourselves by thinking up excuses for our subconscious group identity. We are evolved to hold our group together partly by saying bad things about their group. Just study Facebook, and you'll see that all the time. People strengthening their own group identity by posting bad things about other groups. We all do it. That was a successful evolutionary strategy for Cro-Magnon people in their simple, violent world. In our modern world, it often does lead us to betray our own highest principles. A recent Scientific American magazine article explained how this plays out. When we see someone we don't know, particularly someone who looks different from us, our subconscious lights up with stereotypes, put there by years of social input. Quote, "These assumptions about the social group, hostile, criminal, lazy, pleasant, resourceful, and so on, are often incorrect for the individual standing in front of us who has done nothing to merit any impression one way or the other. But these reflexive reactions often persist even if they run counter to our conscious beliefs. Close quote. Subconscious stereotypes retain their power even though they're the opposite of our conscious beliefs. In other words, we may consciously be anti-racist, but that does not stop our subconscious prejudices and stereotypes we may not even realize we have. And the article goes on to say, quote, "Many people who say they have a positive attitude toward minority groups are astonished when social scientists reveal these contradictions using a simple test called the implicit associations test for racial bias." And of course, we have many ethnic identities that can provoke stereotypes. I'm talking specifically about black-white stereotypes, but they're across the board. There are many stereotypes. Again, I totally believe in racial equality in my conscious mind. I know modern science has learned that racial differences, so-called racial differences, mean nothing when it comes to intelligence or personality. But the implicit associations test reveals that if I see a young black man I don't know, the primal subconscious part of my mind will react in a racially stereotyping way. Or, if old guard union leader John Delmonico sees a photo of Neville Gordon in a sweatshirt and stocking cap, he does not see the perfect probation record or the perfect work record of a young man trying to overcome a misstep. He does not see a young man who has never committed a violent crime working to help poor people. He sees a faceless gangbanger. And the entertainers pretending to be news people at KSTP television see only a story about a faceless gangbanger. What's going on? In a few minutes, we'll watch another video that talks about cracking the code of stereotyping. That is, we have a stereotype at one level of our brain, but we justify it with a conscious excuse from a higher level. That's what's going on in the Pointergate photo. It's not really about hand gestures. That's just the excuse. It's not about what these arms are doing. It's so significant the KSTP blanked out Neville Gordon's face. The image is politically powerful, very primal, because we're seeing a faceless young black man with his arm around an attractive white woman. That's how the code works. An unconscious instinct is so powerful. It reacts before our rational mental processes can catch up, and unless we make an enlightened, conscious effort, we're likely to use rational excuses to justify the irrational instincts. But the good news is, if we understand this, if we understand how unconscious bias works, we can train ourselves to overcome it. We can be aware of it. We can react in a way that affirms life and our common humanity. It does require practice and effort, but this can be overcome. We can do this. But this is all context for Ferguson, Missouri, where last August, black youth Michael Brown was shot and killed by a white police officer, Darren Wilson. Now, one side insists that the brutal young black man was throwing his weight around, attacked the policeman, tried to get a hold of his gun, and basically got what he deserved. And the other side says the white police officer was throwing his weight around, a scuffle broke out, and he wantonly gunned down an unarmed black youth. Incendiary accusations have come from both sides, and metropolitan St. Louis is bracing itself for big trouble no matter what the courts decide. And what I want to do this morning, again, is take a step back and reflect what's going on here. This is a too human tragedy between all too average human beings. It happens too often in towns all across this country. And it's a tragedy. But it's not about good guys and bad guys. It's about subconscious racial baggage fed into all of us by 500 years of a society in which for 400 of those 500 years, descendants of African people were almost universally viewed as the other, the outgroup, and less than human by descendants of European people. And below the level of our unconscious minds, or below the level of our conscious minds, in our unconscious, that baggage is still there. By all accounts, Darren Wilson is a very average police officer. He has no professional infractions on his record, at least not till now, and I feel some real sympathy for him. I am quite certain that he did not get up that morning wanting to kill an unarmed black youth. His records and his own statements, though, do show that he got up that morning planning one more day of keeping scary black people in line. I truly feel sympathy and respect for the men and women who serve as our police officers. It is tough, scary, and often dangerous work. Police officers do get hurt and killed in the line of duty, protecting us. At the same time, subconscious group dynamics is such a powerful force, and there is a fine line between being prepared to defend yourself in a violent situation on one side, or being so aggressive you yourself provoke the violent situation on the other. And police in the St. Louis suburbs and many other places are not adequately trained to see that line. It's not because they're bad people. They're good people. But they're not adequately trained. At the same time, our court system is such a blunt instrument. The courts also pick up on unconscious social stereotypes to the point I don't think the courts are capable of consistently sorting out cases like this. We're probably naive to expect justice out of the court system in Ferguson, Missouri, and whatever the court decides, the tragedy has already taken place. I think we're naive to expect our justice system to consistently sort out the stream of police brutality cases across the country. That's been going on a very long time. What's going on? The Marvin Gaye song about police brutality shows us that this problem has gone on unchanged for at least the 45 years since that song was conceived. And again, it's not about anyone's criminality, it's about the tragedy of human perception. I think it's safe to say the broad majority of police officers do mean to put their own welfare on the line to protect and defend. I honor that. I truly do. Where we go wrong in Ferguson as elsewhere is, again, inadequate insight and inadequate or inappropriate training that does not help us with the shadow side of the human mind and human group dynamics, so that inadequately trained police too easily begin to develop a culture not so much protecting and defending the citizens right in front of them in poor districts like Ferguson or the north side of Minneapolis or the south side of Chicago, but as us versus them. Not protecting and defending, but occupying and controlling. Instead of officers assisting their fellow citizens, we begin to turn our police in too many slums into something more like army troops occupying Baghdad. We do need better accountability and training to keep us all from slipping into us versus them. On every side of this issue, we're all vulnerable to that. At the same time, I do have to honor the fact that it may just be a little too easy for me to stand here in my own safety and relative privilege and preach grief instead of anger at a tragedy like Michael Brown's. If my children faced what many children and youth of color do face every day, I could see how I might feel not grief but anger. And that very difference, that ability for me to get this distance, is a mark of my own privilege. Now, I grant there is a small minority of bad cops out there, just as there is also a small minority of what you might call bad protesters. But this is a time for neither. It is, however, a time for witness. I'm not sure there has ever been a more important time in my adult life for thoughtful, nonviolent witness. Events are planned all across the country to respond to the Ferguson grand jury decision when it's unsealed. And I will join, if I at all can, not to promote good guys over bad guys, but to support all human guys. To stand in witness for illumination, the social inequities and social injustices that hide within the shadow of human nature itself. To witness for greater insight into the oppression we all encourage with us versus them and long-conditioned social stereotyping. We all need to look deeper. We all need to search our souls, look harder at ourselves, train ourselves, enlighten ourselves to cast light into our collective shadows. Not just the police in St. Louis, crucial though that is, but all of us in all places. We all need to retrain and rethink. We need witness, not just the witness of outrage, even though outrage is real, and not just the witness for justice, even though justice is essential. We need the witness of love and insight and understanding, the vision to craft a wiser future for all of us. Amen. May it be so. "45 years ago, after witnessing an incident of police brutality, Motown singers Ronaldo Benson, Al Cleveland, and Marvin Gaye co-wrote What's Going On. At the suggestion that it was a protest song, co-writer Benson replied, "No, man, it's a love song. It's a meditation about love and understanding. I want to know what's going on." The lyrics say, "Mother, mother, there's too many of you crying. Brother, 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 there's far too many of you dying. You know we've got to find a way to bring some love in here today. Father, Father, we don't need to escalate. You see, war is not the answer, for only love can conquer hate. You know we've got to find a way to bring some love in here today. Picket lines and picket signs, don't punish me with brutality, talk to me so you can see what's going on." Yeah, what's going on? What's going on? Father, Father, everybody thinks we're wrong, but who are they to judge us simply because our hair is long? You know, we've got to find a way to bring some understanding here today. Picket lines and picket signs, don't punish me with brutality, talk to me so that you can see what's going on. Yeah, what's going on? Tell me what's going on. What's going on? What's going on? What's going on?